wow. I can't say I'm surprised at the result here. I am upset about it, but I'm not surprised. And I think the reality of this situation and with this election, and something that I think a lot of leftists have known for a while, but I think normal people and people who are just not as plugged in have not realized, is just how much of this writing has been on the wall for a while. And to be fair, I will say I genuinely thought Harris would win. I didn't think it would be I knew it would be close. Okay. I thought she would hold the blue wall, and I thought, maybe, like maybe electorally it wouldn't have been as close as the actual races were. Like it would have come down to the wire, but she would have just barely pulled ahead. And I definitely thought she was going to win the popular vote regardless. Like if she lost, I still thought that the popular vote was on lock for anybody but Trump. And I mean, I was wrong on that too. So I got to say, I'm not surprised by this stuff, but I am disappointed. And I think the reality of why this went the way that it did, just like AOC said in her live, I don't know if you guys have watched it, but I highly recommend it. It's a confluence of a lot of factors, right? There was obviously insane turnout from white people who overwhelmingly voted for Trump. There were some surprising flips where it was not the majority of people, but a significant portion of like the Latino men that came out for Trump, and some other minority groups that came out for Trump in greater numbers than what you would expect. And I think this speaks to a long standing problem that the Democratic Party has had for the entirety of my existence of being able to vote, has been that they largely don't fulfill their promises at all, and also kind of barely promise anything. Even their promises are compromises from the beginning, and then they don't even follow through on those. So I think what's happened is that there's been an assumption that a certain group of people or certain groups of people were automatically going to vote Dem no matter what. Because they understood the stakes of like this guy on the other side very much loves, dictators and strongmen leaders and whatever. And that he very much wants to emulate that as much as he can within, the confines of American democracy, or lack thereof now. But I think what we're seeing is that this feeling of, you haven't done shit for me in how long? And even though, obviously, if you actually look at the facts, even when the Dems have had the House and the Senate and the presidency, it's still truly never been truly holding the power. There's always been, the centrists and the corporate Dems that have held things hostage and watered down bills to not be as good as they could be. Like, obviously, we could talk about the specifics of certain scenarios all day where, yeah, but if you're being honest about the situation, there was no ability to pass some of these things and whatever, like, for sure. Like, there is definitely that where, from a strategic level, and given the personnel who were in Congress at the time, maybe some of these things weren't possible to pull off, but they didn't even fight, right? Like, Obama didn't even fight for universal health care, and he actually didn't even fight for a public option. He immediately, went all the way down and negotiated from the center rather than from the left. And so when he then made concessions, he made further concessions to the right. And there are a million different circumstances and little things that I could point to that has led to this just gradual shift rightward of the entire country. And a lot of it is, it's the Democrats' fault. It is. It's the Republicans' fault for actively trying to destroy things. Like, so let's not give the Dems too much credit. Republicans literally have repeatedly tried to defund things that are good for regular people, and then be like, see, government doesn't work. The quote unquote starving the beast. That's been their policy forever. Like, they've always wanted to basically, any government policy that helps you or I or some regular Joe Schmo, they want to defund it until it doesn't work. And they want to create a bunch of qualifications of like, oh, well, you need to be 5'5" and you need to be under 300 pounds and whatever. Like, they create these arbitrary lines that make people feel excluded. So then it's like, oh, well, that guy's getting something and I'm not getting shit. And, obviously people are very selfish. So that's why I'm a big supporter of universal programs. But what we're seeing is largely this unfilled opposition party, right? Where the Democrats are not an opposition party and the Republicans are actively like a harmful, terrible party that basically only wants bad things, And there's a lot of memes of like, of them offering like diarrhea forever and then, ponies forever or whatever. But that's the thing is that that's not even what it is. It's literally, it's like diarrhea forever if you're, for Republican policies, or we'll give you some anti-diarrhea pills every once in a while. That's the other side of it. And like, as gross as that image is in my mind right now, but like, that's what it is. You're getting one side that is literally offering you a shit sandwich and it's going to force you to eat it whether you like it or not. And then you have the other side that is effectively only going to hold back some of the diarrhea sandwich or the shit sandwich, Like they're not actually going to give you something better. They're just going to not make you eat it as much, And I was saying this metaphor, not this particular one, but I was saying this other metaphor in an earlier discussion where it's like if the Republicans are bombing an entire city, the Democrats are building like one or two houses after they do it. And so every time the Republicans have bombed a city and just destroyed everything, then you got the Democrats, they come in and they're like, oh, well, we'll build a house here and a house here. And, only these people are allowed to move into it and whatever. Like, and so that's the gist of it being that they have been not meeting the needs of the American people for a long time. And I think to some extent, a lot of people don't expect anything out of Republicans, right? Like that they're just going to give you bad stuff. And obviously there are people who are Republican and they genuinely think cutting benefits from some poor guy who they've never met, who really needs it. They genuinely think that by doing that, it's going to put more money in their pocket. That's not how it works. But I get that there's this, well, if they're getting these benefits, and I'm not getting them, then I want them to not get them either. And it's really selfish and short-sighted and doesn't even remotely pass the sniff test in terms of actual like long-term viability or anything. But there is that simplistic way of looking at it of like, well, if we're spending money on this, then that means that they're not spending money on this. And the reality is that the priorities, the financial priorities of the government, do need to be shifted, and we do need to take money away from some things, or just tax more on certain very wealthy individuals who, trust me, they won't miss it, in order to raise the revenue to do other things. But it's not mutually exclusive. You can do both things, right? We can raise taxes on the insanely wealthy and raise taxes on them in the places that they need to, right? They're not earning a salary in the way that you and I might be, or hourly wage or whatever. They're earning money in other ways. Well, then there's ways to tax that, and that would raise revenue. That would then give us more budget to do other things. But also even just cutting some military budget stuff and just reallocating those funds towards universal healthcare, universal, at least tuition-free college, for at least undergrad. It's fine if we still want grad school to be, a next step up, but then, we're at least helping the whole student loan debt problem. So when you have entire groups of the population that their entire needs are being neglected, not even just not being met, but straight up being neglected and being told to wait, and you've been told to wait for so long, and then every time that there's even a crumb of power being given to them, they squander it and they like don't use power effectively. And they're like afraid of like, oh, well, we don't want to do this. And then meanwhile, the Republicans are just like knifing people in the back, like Game of Thrones style, like doing whatever they can to get to the Iron Throne. And, there is a middle ground there, right? You don't have to be as ruthless and as down in the depths of hell as the Republicans, to achieve things with power, but you do need to know how to wield it, and you need to know to wield it for the right things. And something that AOC touched on in her live was about how there are just certain donors that are funding certain campaigns. And so it's not even necessarily every campaign, right? But those donors contributing to these campaigns, they don't want you to be able to talk about how they're contributing to some of the problems that we're seeing, right? Like some of the problems is corporate greed. Well, if some of those corporations are funding your campaign, or not even your campaign, but just another member of your party's campaign in another state, and they're like, hey, if you talk about this, they're going to pull my funding, and I'm going against this demon who wants to just gut everything and ruin the world, then they're thinking, well, to be practical, we'll talk about the problem, but we won't specify who it is. And that ends up just coming off as really non-genuine, right? It ends up coming off as just inauthentic. Like, yeah, you're speaking generally about these issues, but what are you going to do specifically? And I think the reality is that you just have to be specific. You got to be unafraid to call Amazon a problem. You got to be unafraid to call some of these specific companies that are price gouging, especially in the grocery space, and Kroger, and all of the big ones that own all of our fucking grocery chains. And I think where we're at now is, obviously we have to just fight tyranny. I mean, we got to literally fight for everything, and we need to organize. And where I'm at now mentally is, I want to find whatever local community organizing groups I can find, and I want to see what can I do to lend my aid to help people, because I'm not about to let some people who are either literal Nazis or Nazi adjacent, or at the very least Nazi accepting, I'm not about to let them take over this country when we literally fought the Nazis in World War II. My grandpa fought the Nazis in World War II. He was in the European theater, and he got shot down and got a Purple Heart and everything. And he defended our right to freedom. He defended America from people like this, who are waving the American flag as if they're American, when they're literally standing for everything we fought for, and everything we fought against, I should say. And it's insane to me that Republicans try to claim that they're so American when these things that they're advocating for are like the most anti-American and un-American shit I've ever heard. And they literally want to control every aspect of your life. Like, I thought you were a small government person, but no, they want government in your lives in all of these different ways, just because they don't like the way you're doing something, right? Like, for my LGBTQ friends, like, they just don't like that another guy's banging another guy. I don't know why they give a shit, but they do. And they like literally want to legally prevent you from doing it, And it's just crazy to me that like they try to pretend like they're this small government party. They're not. They're the big government party of, I want to force you into puritanical, Christian values, and under this like very, very fascist. And I know that word gets thrown around a lot, and sometimes maybe too freely, but legitimately, fascism is like a government forcing a type of ideology upon its people. And in this case being like, this Christianity based Puritanism that we have here in the US of these like, Bible thumpers, right? I don't have better words for that, but like, that's the reality. So when you have a party that is literally trying to implement this, where, I'm sorry, but not everybody in America is Christian. Not everybody in America is religious, period, let alone the fact that maybe they're Muslim, maybe they're Jewish, they could be anything. They could be Taoist or something, right? And they're going to try to create laws that only apply based on if you believe the set of rules that Christianity has laid out. Like, how can you not understand how un-American that is? The whole point of the United States, when it was formed, was to get away from the fact that England wanted you to have a very specific type of Christianity. And the founding fathers didn't want that. Not to say that they weren't religious people. Some of them were, some of them weren't. But they didn't want to have to subscribe to a particular branch, Catholicism, Christianity, whatever, Protestant, et cetera, all the subsectors of Christianity. So the fact that we have an entire group of people who are trying to force this down our throat, whether we believe in that stuff or not, or whether we're even religious to begin with, is insane. And that's not what this country stands for. And it's un-American, quite frankly, to be advocating for those things. So, the sad part is that there's a lot of people who voted for this, And I would say that I really think like maybe 30% of those people who voted for it actually know what it entails and are like genuinely are excited about that. And I think a lot of other people don't really grasp how bad this second term is going to be. Like, I don't think they understand when he starts rounding people up from their houses and stuff. And that's not an exaggeration. If he's doing this mass deportation thing, he legitimately is going to go through and he's going to deport people. And he's going to deport people who might not even be here illegally, right? Like, he didn't care that the Haitians migrated here legally when he was saying that they're eating the dogs and the cats. You know, he was all about like, yeah, I just want to get them out because they look like people I don't like, right? So, you know, for him, the facts of whether somebody was here legally or not, or whether there's somebody who is here, you know, genuinely claiming asylum from a country where they're being persecuted politically by a fucking dictator, he doesn't care about that. He doesn't care if your claim is legit. He just wants to stop like black and brown people from coming in. Let's be real. Do you think he cares if a Canadian comes in? Probably not. Not if they're white. And I think that's just a reality we have to accept, is that that is going to happen. He's going to go for this stuff. Now, whether he can genuinely pull off mass deportation at this scale, you know, using law enforcement and the National Guard and everything that he's promising, I don't know. It's pretty hard to be able to pull off, but that doesn't mean he isn't going to try. And that doesn't mean he isn't going to be successful for at least a percentage of these people. Not to mention the negative ramifications that's going to have on the economy, period. Right? Like, you pull out a bunch of people who are doing jobs that people don't want to do, and they're getting paid under the table and already getting probably shafted in terms of the pay and zero benefits and all this other stuff. Meanwhile, they're paying taxes on every single thing that they're buying, right? Every time they're buying a sales tax item, they're paying into the system. So you're going to take out a bunch of people who are paying into the system and getting none of the benefits because they can't claim benefits if they're here illegally. It's a whole thing. And don't even get me started on the immigration process, because it can be really difficult, you know. It can be a difficult process, and it's expensive. It's very expensive to even just apply, let alone like the different paperwork you might have to do. You know, it's a little bit easier when you marry somebody, and I could say that from experience, because my wife and I, you know, we got married, and she's a Venezuelan immigrant. She was here on asylum. They still have not called her asylum case. And luckily, because we got married, and to be fair, we got married because it was time. We were dating for 5 years and we were ready to do it. And we applied for the green card before they raised the prices, because they raised the prices by a lot this year. And we were able to do it, and it's great. And she at least has her green card, so at least I don't have to worry about her being deported. But guess what? Her family is here on asylum. And who's to say that Trump doesn't just say, any pending asylum cases, fuck them. And he just sends them back. Well, their whole life is here, you know? So it's just, the whole thing is just, it's insane, and we are going to deal with some stuff. But I, for one, am very much ready to fight this at every level possible. And I'm ready to join community organizations. I'm ready to do what we need to do. And we are going to, we're going to do what we can, given the fact that he owns, you know, all of government, basically. Probably the House, maybe not, but probably the House, the Senate, and the presidency. He's going to pass some heinous shit, and he's going to do some horrible shit in the very beginning. And there's not going to be much we can do to stop it legally. I mean, we'll challenge as much as we can, but I mean, he also owns all the courts. So, you know, here we are in episode 3 of Star Wars at this point. You know, this is Palpatine, man. Palpatine's in power, and he's essentially bought the House and the Senate, and he owns all the courts and stuff. So, you know, we certainly have a battle that I'm not going to lie to you and sugarcoat it. We're going to lose a lot in this time. We're going to just lose a lot of stuff. Rights, battles, people, probably. It's just going to happen. And this is what people voted for. So it's what we're going to get. That being said, in 2 years, when midterms comes around, we can at least kneecap him and prevent him from, you know, hopefully having a blank check from Congress. So that's kind of, that's my plan, is just, I'm going to get involved. I'm going to do what I can. I mean, I voted. I've been advocating on social media for what I thought was the least harm option, being in Kamala. Not that she's my favorite candidate, because I'm a Bernie guy. Let's be real. But that being said, I'm also pragmatic, and I'm willing to to vote for who we need to, whether they're perfect or not. That's going to get us the coalition that we need to broadly seize power and then use it to pass things that tangibly help regular people. That's what this is all about. Is that not the point of collectivism with government, right? It's like we use the collective resources that we have and skill sets and everything from our government to do things that benefits us all. That's why we have parks. That's why we have roads and bridges and all these things. We do this because when we all work together and we all pool our resources, we all benefit from those things. We all benefit from bridges. We all benefit from roads. We all benefit from parks and leisurely places that we can hang out and spend time with one another in. And we're missing that connection. And I, for one, I'm going to start seeking out that connection through community organizing and building. And I encourage you to as well. Feel free to reach out to me and let me know if you know of groups, specifically here in Chicago. If you know of groups that need some help or would be a good place to put my time and energy into. As I do more research and find out where those places are, I will let you know. But I'm so serious about this. I'm not about to take this, lying down. This is my moment. I know it's a lot of moment of people wanting to give up, and I get it. And I was there. I've been there. But I'm not going to just let this happen. I'm not going to let it. I'm not going to watch my country fall into fascism, and watch it just get welcomed with open arms. I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to do what I can in my power to stand up to it and to offer my time and energy into the things that hopefully will tangibly make at least my local community better. And, you start there and you work up. But I really encourage you all to as well. So thank you. Feels good to be back in the chair. I'm going to be making more videos again because more than just talking about this stuff, but just in general. I got a lot to talk about, a lot of things that I've learned in these last 6 months, honestly, where I feel like I've done a lot of good inner work and I'm in a really good place mentally, which is funny because this is fucking terrible to happen outside of that. Because otherwise, me personally, I've been doing really well. But that being said, if my fellow Americans and fellow humans are not doing well, then I'm still hurting on some level for that. So thank you so much for your time. If you made it this far into the video, holy shit. I highly doubt anybody did, but thank you. I appreciate it. If you did, just comment. Comment, you're the best, Kevin. And then I'll know that you made it here. All right, thanks.